Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to have you around today afternoon, 1st of August, Saturday. And today, I'm Madhujit. I'm the founder of the organization Ananya-Women at Work, which is a diversity and inclusion consulting organization based out of Hyderabad, India. And with me today is Clare Appleyard and Kirtika Rajaram. Clare is based out of South Africa. We are in conversation with Clare in our series of Beyond Belief. And today, Clare is going to talk about surviving the high tide. And before I talk about Clare now, I want to introduce Kirtika with you, my co-host.
Hi, everybody.
And Kirtika is by profession a visual designer, and the email, the designs that you see on email is the Kirtika behind all that. So thank you, Kirtika, for being there today. So about Clare, let me read it out for you. Clare is a diamond specialist and a co-owner, Katannuta Diamonds, South Africa. Clare graduated from University of Cape Town with master's degree in geology and geochemistry. After working for a corporate mining giants, De Beers and Anglo American for 7 years, she decided to branch out into entrepreneurship. A love for diamonds and gemstones and a desire to help educate people led to the formation of Katannuta Diamonds in 2006. For the past 14 years, Clare has helped countless individuals and couples with creation of luxury precious jewelry in form of engagement rings, wedding rings, birthdays, and anniversary presents. Katannuta is a Buddhist word for gratitude and constant reminder to Clare to be grateful that she gets to do what she loves on a daily basis. So Clare, while this was not the first question, I'm taking you by surprise. I'm going to ask you more about the word Katannuta because you've talked about Buddhist, and we have Suparna here. Suparna, in her backdrop, she has a Buddhist picture on her profile. So so maybe you may want to share that.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you. Obviously, thank you for the opportunity to join you, Madhu. And thank you for all you've taught me over the past 2.5 years. I think we've built an outstanding relationship. What Madhu hasn't said is that we met through a mentorship program, and she is my mentor still on the Cherie Blair Foundation for Women mentorship program. And I credit her with a massive turnaround in Katannuta Diamonds results over the past 2.5 years. So thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. Thank you for giving us such a platform. So yes, Katannuta is the Pali Buddhist word for gratitude. And it makes sense to start with this question rather than your first prepared question. And it comes down to literally a midlife crisis I had at the grand old age of 30 back in 2006, and I left De Beers at that stage and I'd gone to Anglo American, and I literally had a nervous breakdown, and it wasn't anything to do with the corporate world. It was a whole lot of stuff going on in my head, and if I actually think about it now, it came down to a whole lot of limiting beliefs I had in my head about life and relationships and love and careers and what life should be at the age of 30. And I landed up in hospital for 5 days, literally on an outpatient program, just so I could get back, reassess my brain basically. And it was a really tough time for both myself and my partner Davina. I mean, she went through a hell of a lot with me in that stage, and I credit her for literally kicking me back into touch. And it was a horrible time, but at the same time, we just started on our journey of personal development. We discovered personal development, and we knew that something good would come of it. That even though it was a horrible time and a really tough period, we knew that we had to be grateful for it because there was something bigger and better that was going to come as a result of that. And we started, gratitude is a huge thing, and gratitude was a huge thing in all the personal development teachers that we were reading and listening to. And literally we went online and searched for gratitude in different languages. and Katannuta came up, and we went, I don't know if we're pronouncing it right, but that's a really cool name. And we went, Katannuta. Okay, that's cool. That could work. Is Katannuta.com available as a domain? Yes, it is. and that was, that was where we took it from. And the company has evolved tremendously from there. And I remember my mother was at that stage still working. She's retired now, but she put me in contact with her boss. That Gail had started a company, and Gail's like, Katannuta. She's like, the name doesn't do anything for me. I don't like the name. The name doesn't do anything for me. And I'm like, well, I don't care. It's our name. And it's stuck, and it is a tongue twister, and people constantly need reminding of it, but it is definitely unique, and it's definitely a reminder to be grateful for the journey that we went through to get to this stage.
Very, very interesting. And you're from Johannesburg originally.
Yes.
And you went to Cape Town to study. And then you were telling me about how you ended up participating in the biggest name in cycling event in Cape Town. And so, what were the beliefs you'd like you to share that over here?
Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna say, actually, I was born in England, and we emigrated to South Africa in 1983.
Okay.
So I was like 6.5. So yes, I am South African. I do have a British passport, which is handy. But I will defend South Africa to the T. And yeah, the Cape Town cycle race came about when I was in my last year of high school. I was awarded a bursary to study geology. So there was no way my parents were going to be able to afford to pay for me to go to university. The only chance I had literally of studying was to get a bursary, and I ended up with a bursary from De Beers. And I was chatting to one of the teachers in our high school, and she didn't teach me. On reflection, I had a little bit of a crush on her, but that's beside the point. And I was chatting to her one day, and she said, she's like, where are you going to study? And I said, Wits University, which is the Johannesburg University. And she's like, why? And I said, so I can stay at home. And she went, why? And I went, I don't know. And she said, go to Cape Town. And I'm like, okay. So I went to University of Cape Town, and I kept in contact with this teacher. And she said to me, she's like, I'm coming down to Cape Town to do this August cycle race. And I'm like, what is that? And she's like, it's a cycle race, come and take a look. So literally myself and a friend cycled ourselves from the University of Cape Town to a particular point in Cape Town. It took us hours because it was up a giant hill. And I remember getting to the top of this hill, and it was the view down into Camps Bay in Cape Town. And it was the most single breathtaking view I've ever seen. Anyway, we saw the race, and I'm like, this is phenomenal. I want to do this. And what it is, it's the biggest individually timed cycle race in the world. And it is possibly the most scenic cycle race in the world, because it literally does the entire Cape Town Peninsula. So it does perhaps the most beautiful part of coastline in the world, not just South Africa. And it's 110 kilometers, and people just have fun. And I think at that stage, it was about 25,000 cyclists that participated. And I saw all these cyclists coming past, and they were having a great time. And I'm like, I want to do that. And Sandy, who was the teacher, said to me, come do it next year. And I'm like, okay, sure. So I phone up my parents, and I speak to my mother, and I said, I'm going to do the Argus next year. And she went, you can't do that. And I'm like, what? Watch me. I'm like I'm the kind of person, you don't tell me what to do or not do. So if you tell me I can't do something, I am going to go out of my way to prove you wrong and do it. So my mother's like, you can't do that. And I'm like, oh, just you wait. And I did about 13 cycle tours. So, that was like a, I love you, mother, but you know what? I'm going to prove you wrong. And that was her belief. And my belief was also, this is going to be a challenge. I've never cycled that far. How much do I have to train? I don't have a proper bicycle. So there was all sorts of stuff that I had to overcome to finish that cycle race. And I did it, and I did it again, and did it again, and did it again,
That's interesting. You just said something which I'd like to catch you on, is that your mother's belief, you were you took it as a challenge, that somebody else's belief, I'm going to prove her wrong. You took it as a challenge, and you did it again and again. And you did, despite not having the best of bicycles, the best of trainings, best of whatever for such a huge event.
Right.
And your own beliefs, you went past there. So any specific one that you went past your own belief there?
Probably that I didn't have the right equipment and I didn't have a good enough bicycle, and how am I going to get that fit? You know, like I'd never cycled that far ever. I'd never spent 5 hours on a seat of a bicycle before. So it was a whole lot of accumulative, I think, small beliefs that I had to overcome. But once I got out and did it, it became easier to do it the next time, and easier to do it the next time, and easier to do it again, you know.
Okay. Interesting. So now coming back to your professional life. I mean, after college, I'm assuming you joined De Beers. And De Beers is the name in the industry. You know, there's still nobody's able to catch up with them. So diamonds and De Beers go together. You left a cushy job to start on your own.
Right.
With absolutely, I would say, I mean, so what were the beliefs there that you came out of it? And you, because I'm sure people would have said, to continue here, why are you doing this to yourself?
Yeah. So it was a sequence of events. So what had actually happened was, whilst I was at De Beers, I had met a diamond dealer, a cut and polished diamond trader. And it happened when my dad, it was actually my dad's fault, I'll blame him. It was my parents, I guess it was their 30th wedding anniversary. And my dad has a habit of waiting until the last minute and then roping me in to help with presents, whether it's birthday, whether it's Christmas, you know, whatever. So he phones me up one day and I'm in my office at De Beers and he says, our wedding anniversary is coming up and it's the pearl wedding anniversary. Where do I get pearls? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know anything about pearls. I work at De Beers.
Yeah.
Like, maybe we should look at a diamond. And a couple of the girls in the office had gotten engaged and they'd worked with a particular diamond guy. So I ended up taking my dad to Alan. And I went to Alan's house on a Saturday morning with my dad and we looked at a selection of diamonds. And these things just blew me away. I was just super excited to be looking at these stones and discussing the color and clarity and all that kind of stuff. And Alan saw my level of interest and he said to me, if you bring me clients, I will give you 5% of the sale. And I'm like, bonus, that's awesome. So that was how it started. De Beers then went through, probably maybe 6 months later, started to go through retrenchments.
Okay.
And I went, this was my belief. I'm like, I have a master's degree. I'm not going to hang around and get retrenched. I'm better than that. And I went looking for a new job, which I then got at Anglo-American, which was obviously the sister company. And it was at Anglo-American that, you know, the dog poo hit the fan and I had my little nervous breakdown. And what had happened was I'd looked at Alan's style of life. And Alan had said to me, he's like, you can start a business with an email address and a cell phone. You do not need an office. You do not need anything fancy. Everything, he was way ahead of the time technology wise. He was about 60 at the time. And he's like, you need a cell phone and an email address and you can run a business. And I went, okay, cool. So when I had my little breakdown at Anglo-American and I went, I don't want to be in the corporate environment. I find that it's not great for my mental health. It's not feeding me. It's not what I want to be doing. I wanted Alan's style of life. And I literally went, I have to make a change. The breakdown was enough for me to go, something needs to change. And I'm going to sod the corporate world and go out on my own because I wanted that freedom. I wanted to be able to do what I wanted when I wanted. And that was taking the step. So I left De Beers to go to Anglo, and it was at Anglo that was the catalyst, but I'd met Alan whilst I was still at De Beers, if that makes sense. And he was encouraging. He's like, you come to me every Saturday morning. I will teach you stuff. I will give you lessons. And I spent hours with this guy on a weekend, you know, and he would just teach me about diamonds. I mean, I knew the geological side, I knew the scientific side, but the cut and polish side, he was just so giving of his information and so giving of his time and knowledge. And it was, I think, his belief in me to a certain extent that helped me go, I can do this. And I was very reliant on him for a long time. When I started Katannuta, he was my sole provider. Like, I didn't know anybody else, and he kept it very close. He kept things very close to his chest. So I didn't get to meet anybody else. I didn't get to know anybody else, but it was enough for me to start getting my foot in the door, if that makes sense.
And I mean, the mentor, Alan, has played a huge role in where you are today. In fact, last week, Suparna was there. Last time Suparna was there on call over here. And she was also talking about a mentor who helped her shape, where she, that individual had more belief in her than she had in herself. Suparna is from a technical background. She moved into a learning role, training role.
Right.
And so her mentor long ago had told her, you're going to become a good trainer. And Suparna had no clue about a trainer at that time. So,
right.
So
it's true. Often the mentor has more belief in you than you have in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can tap into that, you can leverage that and use that to your advantage.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
So, I mean, then the next question, obviously, when I first saw you, when we met through Sherry Clare, I was shared your profile and you were shared my profile. And when I read the profile, a diamond dealer, of course, I would have expected somebody with huge diamonds and somebody who's kind of, absolutely perfect makeup, ready to serve. I mean, modeling, do her modeling, and with with nicely done up everything. And of course, even the surroundings, huge glass windows. When I see, when I say about I'm going to buy diamonds, I would think about, okay, huge glass windows with all kind of lighting and showcase and everything around. Perfect. You are none of that. So you're kind of a different person for my beliefs in that area.
What do you mean I'm not model-like with perfect makeup?
No makeup. So something here. And not a single piece of jewelry I've seen you in, except
I have a plain band.
Yeah.
That is a good question. So I've always been, I am who I am. I've never been fancy. I've always been down to earth. I'm a tomboy. Like, I'm a tomboy and I'm gay, and I'm pretty much the gay stereotype as far as gay women go. So, and I've got no issue with that. That's just who I am. Obviously, in my defense, I could say that, when we were on the mentorship calls, even if I did have a big fancy showroom, I'd be doing the calls at home. But I think part of it was Alan, because Alan did a lot of work from home. Literally, when I went to look at diamonds with him with my dad, we were sitting at his dining room table in his apartment.
Mm-hmm.
So part of me was going, well, that's what he does. So if he can do it, why can't I do it? I didn't take into account that he was, 55, 60 years old, knew everybody, had a track record, but he kind of planted that seed in that he's doing it this way. So if he's doing it this way, why can't I do it that way? I'm not the type of person who's going to pretend to be something I'm not, So I'm very much this is who I am, take it or leave it. I'm not going to adjust myself for you. The other thing to bear in mind is that the retail end of the jewelry industry is very different to the wholesale end of the jewelry industry. So the retail side of the jewelry industry is what the public sees. So that's the big fancy showrooms. That's the perfectly made up woman, the men in the tailored suits, the perfectly fragrant store as you walk in, and would you like a glass of champagne? The wholesale end of the trade is jeans and t-shirts and backpacks, and you want to be as low key and as invisible as possible, because a lot of the times these guys are carrying around millions of dollars worth of stones in their jeans and in their backpacks, and you don't want to attract attention. You want to fly under the radar. There's a reason that it's the jewelry stores that get hit in robberies, not the guy with the backpack kind of thing. So the industry is almost bipolar. You've got the very fancy retail side, and then you've got the very low-key wholesale trade. And I kind of came into it working with Alan, who was a wholesaler. So that worked perfectly for me. You know, the thing about the fancy retail stores is that maybe not for some people, but for me, if I was shopping for jewelry, that would be intimidating because that's not who I am. So when you walk into a lot of those jewelry stores, those salespeople with their perfect manicures and perfectly brushed hair and perfectly made up makeup, they don't know squat about diamonds and they don't know squat about jewelry manufacture and sales, but they will look you up and down and make a very quick assessment as to whether they think they're going to get a sale out of you or not. And that's intimidating. I find that intimidating. If I walk in my jeans and t-shirts, I know that I have way more knowledge, way more expertise, and way more just experience than they have, but they're going to judge me based on my appearance. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of the guys feel the same way. If they're shopping for an engagement ring, they don't want to be made to feel inferior. They don't want to be treated in a condescending manner. They want to be comfortable. And that's the thing. I mean, I remember in 2003, when I was still working at De Beers, there was a whole lot of us on our way to Canada for a conference, to a Kimberlite conference. And we had a stopover in London. We had like a 12-hour layover in London, and De Beers had just opened their flagship jewelry store in London. It was De Beers' first foray into retail jewelry sales. And there was about 7 of us that got off a 12-hour flight from South Africa in jeans, in hiking boots, in backpacks that walked into the store in London. Uh-huh. And you should have seen the looks we got. They were like, do we need to call security? Why are you here? What are you doing? And we're like, oh, we work for De Beers. And they're like, security, you know. And we were going, we're the geologists. We find these diamond mines. You know, if it wasn't for us, you wouldn't have stuff to sell. But, you know, it's all about perception. And the great thing is that the internet allows you to create whatever perception you want. Mm-hmm. You know, so you can come across on the internet, you can build a presence, maybe not as equal and big to a company like De Beers, but if you know how to use the power of the internet, you can create whatever persona or whatever business you like. Mm-hmm. And you can tailor that brand, you know. And that's the thing. So I say to people, like, I have a small office. I work by appointment only. They go, do you have a store? Can we come and look at rings? And I'm like, no, I don't, you know. So I'm going to build that rapport with you first. And I think that's where my expertise and knowledge comes in, is that I can make people feel comfortable. And by the time they get to me, they're like, she knows what she's talking about, you know. Mm-hmm. Damn, that was a long answer. Sorry.
No, but quite a few things. In fact, when you say this, I remember my personal experience when I walked into a jewelry store for diamonds particularly, and I didn't like anything. And when I was walking out, this lady comes up to me and says, oh, hello, ma'am, what happened? You didn't like anything? And, you know, and she did a small talk. When I came out, I realized they were actually trying to see if I haven't picked up anything. And they were buying time to see everything is fine there, and so that I could walk out after that. So,
like, you weren't shoplifting. They were checking that you weren't shoplifting.
Checking that. So, and I'm okay with that, because I know a lot of people, probably somebody who's perfectly decked up also go in and do the shoplifting. So,
for sure.
But I like the way she did it, because so politely, when did you not like anything? Would you like to see anything else, etc. And then she got a signal from the security, which I managed to see, and that's how I know it happened.
They're like, she's good to go. You can let her out.
You can let her out, yes.
Nothing is missing. That's hilarious.
So now I'm going to shift to the other topic that I want you to touch base upon, is networking. You've been a big fan of networking, and we got introduced indirectly to Linus, directly to Sherry Blair. And Linus you've been contributing a lot in terms of blogs, in terms of so many other ways that you've done. So tell us more about it, about this networking that you do, and how has it helped you in your journey in diamonds?
Right. Okay. So networking is a huge thing, and not everybody is comfortable with it. And there's very few people that do it properly. And that to me has been clear from the start. So what happened when I started with Katannuta Diamonds, Facebook had just started, obviously a couple of years before. And I got onto Facebook in 2007 going, I've got a business, people need to hear about it. You know, so Facebook might be a good way to connect with people. What had also happened, I think I can't remember if it was 2007 or 2008, I joined a network marketing company, and I was like, you know, Facebook is great for meeting new people and engaging with new people and that kind of stuff. And there was a couple of networking sites we joined. South Africa had a specific one called My Genius. There was something called Academy at that stage. I don't know if anybody remembers that one. And they were all kind of the precursor to social media as we have it now. And what had happened with Lionesses in particular, for instance, is that one of the ladies I knew from the network marketing company, Louise, had found Lionesses of Africa, and she gave me Melanie, who is the CEO's business card. And she's like, you need to get hold of this woman. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, you know. And it took me about 8 months. And I went onto the Lionesses website, and they had this platform for you to submit your startup story, like how you started as a business. So I was like, okay, whatever, tap, typed out the story, uploaded some pictures, sent it off. And about 3 days later, then I got an email going that Melanie has looked at your photos. And I'm like, oh, she's a real person. Interesting. And then I get this email from Melanie going, we've published your story on our website, and we'd like you to speak at our next event like 3 days from now. And I'm like, what? Okay, sure, you know. And that was kind of the start of my Lionesses journey. But the thing about networking is that you want to be the person that other people want to connect with. And energy is huge. People are attracted to energy. So you have got to put out that energy that other people are attracted to. And I have changed completely over the last 15 years. And a lot of it came from being in the network marketing business, but also running my own business as well. I mean, I remember going to a seminar, an international seminar as a geologist in Budapest in Hungary in 2005. And I was kind of out of my depth at the conference. I didn't know anybody. I didn't really know what the science was that I was supposed to be interested in. On reflection, I didn't give a damn about the science, whatever, you know. I was more interested in taking photos of the buildings. But they had a cocktail party. They had a cocktail party one night in one of this huge, fancy, historical building in Budapest, and I didn't know a single person. And I walked in, I literally picked up a glass of orange juice. I saw all these little cliques of people talking to each other. I took my glass of orange juice and I literally walked around the perimeter of the room waiting for somebody to speak to me. Nothing happened. So I walked around the perimeter again with my glass of orange juice, waiting for somebody to speak to me. Nothing happened. So I finished my glass of orange juice, put it down, and left without talking to a single person. Like that's how quiet and, you know, timid I was in that state. Whereas now I'll go to a networking event, and I know that most people feel like I did. So you want to go up to them. You want to go and say hello. You want to go and ask them about their business. Have they come to one of these events before? What are they looking to get out of it? The most important thing is to be interested. Don't be interesting, because when you're interesting, you're talking about yourself and you're trying too hard. Be interested in them. Ask them how long they've been in business. Ask them what they do for a living. The worst way to network is when somebody goes to a networking event and they walk around giving out business cards and they're like, hi, here's my card, and you're like, what the hell? Like, you have made no time to get to know me. You have put no effort into finding out what I do to see if there's any interest level, to see if we can help each other at all. I mean, I was at a Lionesses event, I think it was the beginning of last year, and there was a prominent businesswoman who was giving out literally little flyers, pieces of paper with her details on, going, I can save you money, I can save you money, I can save you money. And I went, would you want to know what we do for a living? And she kind of looked at me like I'd crawled out from under a hole. And she'd literally just walked off. And I'm like, that's not networking. you know. So ask people questions about themselves. People love talking about themselves. Oh my God, look, I'm doing it right now. I'm talking about myself. People love talking about themselves. So the more you can get them talking about themselves, the more comfortable they will be.
Mm-hmm.
And the better you have, the better chance you have of them remembering you, because they're going to walk away from that conversation going, oh my God, what a wonderful person. Not, the penny hasn't dropped that they don't know anything about you. All you know is that you got to talk about yourself, which is everybody's favorite topic, you know. So take notes, find out, figure out how you can connect them with other people, figure out what you can do for them. Because if you can do something for them, if you can help them in their business some way, they're going to remember you, and they've got a better chance of helping you out at a later stage. So it's that give first before expecting something in return.
Mm-hmm.
Give your energy, give your knowledge, give your skills, give your expertise, give your wisdom, give your time, and it will come back to you. But be that energy person, be that person that other people want to hang around. There's always somebody in the room. There's always somebody in the room where you go, damn, they just seem cool. I don't know what it is about them, but they just seem cool. You want to be that person because people are drawn to that.
So
That's my advice.
Yeah, when you talk about the Budapest networking event, I mean, I can so much relate to that because I would avoid going to the cocktail parties. And even during the event, when there's talks going on, etc., I would sit there and looking around at people, who's going to speak with me? And look at somebody, is somebody looking at me and smiling? And then when I went, and actually one of my mentors told me, or rather not mentors, I heard that you go with the 50 cards and you must come back with 50 cards. And I used to go with my 50 visiting cards and come back with 48 of my own visiting cards plus 2 of theirs.
Yeah.
I beat myself up quite a bit. I've gone there, I've spent money, and I've not made most of it. And I would get messages like, we met at this place, and this is what I'm going to market. And I used to say, I don't even know the person, and somebody's writing to me. So that's when I developed my own way of networking, that just speak to 1 or 2 people around you. You don't need to have those 50 cards. And then
exactly.
make a connect, as you said, perfectly. So thank you so much for that, Claire. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, if I can say, it is giving out 50 cards is the quantity versus quality approach.
Yes.
Whereas if you spend time building a solid rapport and a solid conversation with 2 or 3 people,
yes,
that is far more beneficial and lucrative than having 50 business cards that you're just going to email and go, hey, I'm Maddie, this is what I do. And they're like, delete, 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 delete. People, network marketing taught me so much. It's just not even funny. But one of those things is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And it's so true.
Interesting.
People are tuned into WII-FM radio, basically, We FM, and it's what's in it for me. That's what people want to know. So you've got to tune into their radio station, and that's when they'll remember you.
What did you say just before that? I want you to repeat that. People don't care?
People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Fantastic. People don't care how much you know unless they know how much you care. Perfect. I guess that's the mantra for networking now.
For sure. Absolutely.
And would you like to share more about the chocolates a bit of it? Because again, diamonds and chocolates, but that was my belief that you broke. Actually, when the moment you said chocolates and I'm going to sell diamonds through a chocolate dealer, it's like,
what the hell? How does that work? All right. So Chocoloza is our collaborative partner. So Chocoloza is run by a wonderful lady called Vicky Bain, who is a South African who went to Belgium as an environmental scientist, actually, and learned how to make chocolates and went, screw the environmental science, this chocolate thing is far more fun. And she was part of the Lionesses Network as well. So obviously I knew of her, I'd met her, and I'd met her sidekick Bronwyn in early 2018 at one of the Lionesses events. And Bronwyn was going, oh, we should do something together. We can do stuff. And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool, whatever. Obviously 2018 was our first year of mentorship together, and being a business where we're making jewelry from scratch means that people don't really get to see and feel the jewelry up front. You know, we're starting with a concept, we're starting with loose gemstones, we're starting with loose diamonds, and the only time you get to feel the finished product is when we deliver it to you in a box, literally. And your whole thing was people need an experience, people need to see and feel and touch jewelry. And I'm like, yeah, where are we going to do this? And I kind of thought Chocoloza has this venue. They have their chocolate workshop where they make all the chocolates. It's a beautiful little, what Vicky calls a chocolate lounge. It's a small venue. And I went, let me continue that conversation with Bronwyn, where she said, let's do something, let's do something, let's do something. And literally we conceptualized this thing where Chocoloza literally designed, for want of a better word, 2 chocolates in the same gold and black coloring as our branding logo. And we said, right, we are going to launch a chocolate diamond range at Chocoloza. Oh, and sorry, that was the very start of it. Was I had some chocolates from Vicky. I had some Chocoloza chocolates as a regular client. I had some jewelry, some chocolate and cognac diamond jewelry, and I took photos of the jewelry on the chocolates. That was it. I took photos of jewelry on the chocolates, and I tagged Vicky. I tagged Chocoloza on social media, and she's like, "Oh my God, this is so cool! This is the best thing ever!" And I'm like, I just wanted props for the jewelry, you know. I just wanted like some cool background, and that was actually the start of it. And I said to Vicky, I'm like, okay, can we do something? Can we maybe start to give some Chocoloza chocolates to our clients with their engagement rings? And then she and Bronwyn works on a couple of designs. And I said, okay, can we do maybe a launch together where I invite our key clients from the past couple of years, our big spenders, our best supporters, you know, the guys that have been with us from the start. And we invited them to Chocoloza. We launched a new logo pretty much at the same time. We launched the chocolates where people, so everybody who came on that night got a sample of those chocolates. We had jewelry on display with chocolate diamonds and cognac diamonds. And it was just cool because then people could come into a safe space. You know, we made sure that security was top notch. It was a closed event. Melanie from Lionesses of Africa came because then we could get, you know, exposure on their website and the blog post and stuff. And it just seemed to be a match because you've got luxury handmade jewelry with luxury handmade chocolates. And even at a first glance, you might not go, why would you have a jewelry event in a chocolate workshop? It just worked. And I think Vicky and I are very similar in ways, and we get on very well. And it's just a luxury product. They're both just luxury products. And it's a small token. Congratulations. Nobody's going to say no to chocolate. Like if you do, you need a slap, you know. So yes, thank you for supporting us. Here's some chocolates to enjoy when you've popped the question, you know. And yes, at a first glance, and I'm very glad you didn't tell me about your reservations, because if you told me about your reservations, I would have been like, oh my God, this is not going to work.
You bet, yes.
And then on top of that, a couple of months later, Ruby Chocolate was launched. So so your first 3 chocolates were dark chocolate, milk chocolate, and white chocolate. And then a couple of months later, Ruby Chocolate was launched as the next chocolate. And I'm like, oh my God, we can have a Ruby night. We can have a Ruby Chocolate and Ruby Jewelry night. So it just worked out, you know, perfectly.
So good. Geetika, do we have any questions? Very, very interesting.
As of now, no, Madhujit ma'am, but I am bombarded with a lot of questions in my head. And yeah, I think that Madhavi or Suparna, if they have any questions, they can unmute themselves and ask, and then I'll go with the question at the last, maybe.
Not really. I'm really enjoying, you know, listening to these varied experiences that you are actually sharing with us, Claire. In fact, I go with what Madhu has said and what you said in terms of networking. I would also probably go take a, glass of orange juice or some juice and then walk around and then come out very quietly. Consider that a tick is done. I went for the networking meet. That's it.
Yeah, yeah.
never wouldn't really interact and do it. It did take me a lot of courage. But then now, since I am, in the teaching profession and you're forced to talk,
Absolutely.
you're forced to talk. You walk into a class, you have 100 students just staring at you. Every single time I go, there's a little bit of, butterflies in, but then you break that and you say, okay, they are here to listen to me. So let's start. And that's how, I slowly also broke out of this thing. That's
Right.
an interesting, information. Thank you. Very, very
No.
interesting experiences.
You're welcome, and thank you for sharing that, because I think
Yeah.
we've all done it. It takes a very extroverted person to start those conversations. Everybody's shy in their own way.
And
So you've got to be that person.
And specifically for women, it's proven that they take time to network and take time to start having a conversation. So Claire, while before Kitika asks her questions, or if anybody else has any other questions.
I had a question.
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
If I can, or you can go ahead.
No,
I can ask it later also.
There's a sharing that I want to do. Okay, go ahead with your question.
Okay. First of all, thanks, Claire. You are sharing your belief diamonds with us, I think, which are more important than the real diamonds that we buy. So thank you so much for that. There's a question that's popping in my head, and there are a few more, but I'll start with this one. I really love your honesty and the way you are constantly saying, this is who I am and take it or leave it kind of a thing. It's amazing. And the question I have is, most of the time we are told, and that's again a belief, that any of those choices that we make, which are very true to ourselves or where we need to be authentic to ourselves, there's a price to pay. Right. So could you just tell us a little about, were there any big prices that you had to pay to be who you are? And also in terms of your sexual choices, since you're so open about it, I think I can ask that question too.
Yeah, no, for sure. I actually can't think that there have been any huge prices to pay. Part of me considers myself very fortunate that I've had the confidence to be who I am and to be able to talk about who I am. Like back in, I probably came out, quote unquote, I think it was about 1997. And I'll tell you who helped in that process was actually Ellen DeGeneres. I don't know if anybody remembers.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
yes.
I was like,
I love her.
There we go. So I'm like, I hope she's gay. I hope she comes out of the closet. And that was like a whole process for me. Seeing her do it, I think helped in my journey at that stage as well. But, there were times when I didn't necessarily talk about it, but there were other times when I'm like, it's going to come out at some stage. If I put it out on the table, you're not going to be able to blindside me with it. There was one instance, one of the, somebody that I'd studied with at university, and I just started work at De Beers at that stage. So it must have been about 2002, 2003, maybe. No, must have been 2000. Sorry, it must have been 2000. So I wasn't out per se at De Beers at that stage. And this lady Bernadette was writing like stories on a weekly basis, and she said something about she'd taken me to a wedding. She'd taken me as her date to the wedding, quote unquote, not as a date, but just as a friend. And she said something in the story about, taking the gay friend to the wedding, and that she sent that out to a whole lot of people. And I was furious. I'm like, how, like, you don't get to do that. You don't get to tell people that I'm gay. Like, that's my prerogative. That's not your prerogative. And that pissed me off. It really pissed me off. And I just got to the stage, but I was young as well. I was really young. And I just got to the stage where I'm like, this is who I am. I'm comfortable with it. If you're not comfortable with it, that's not my issue. It's really not my issue. So I don't go around shouting it. I do believe I look like the stereotype. you know, so if somebody says, do you have a husband? I'm like, what planet are you on? Like, you know, like, why, do I look like I'd have a husband?
Yeah.
Like, seriously, come on, guys, you know. But I like, you know, sense of humor is my diffusion. That's what I use to do that. But I honestly cannot think of any stage, and I'm very fortunate, I think, to have grown up when I have in, you know, my career was in the 2000s where, you know, equality was more of a thing, you know, women were getting bigger roles in the workplace. Sexuality wasn't as big a deal as it was in say the 80s, for instance. So I think timing had a lot to do with it as well. But I cannot honestly think of a big price that I've paid in that respect. And I've been very fortunate never to have I don't ever recall having been like not abused, that was the wrong word, not having been subject to, you know, any sort of gay slurs or gay abuse. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yes, that's the word, bullied. Yeah. So I've been very fortunate in that respect.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think that's another
You're welcome.
belief gone bust.
There we go.
Yeah, and the belief, Claire, about this husband thing, it's not true, because there are many women who choose to look like this and have a husband. So,
Absolutely.
yes, you may call yourself stereotypically gay, but a lot of women look like you and have a husband.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of women that don't look like me that have wives.
Yes.
And that's the stereotype thing for me. I'm like, really? You're very feminine.
Yes.
So yeah, I have my own beliefs in that respect as well. You know, and a lot of that is media based. You know, the media has always portrayed gay women as, you know, fat, dumpy, checked shirt, short hair. You know.
Yeah.
Trust me, there's a whole lot of gay women out there that don't fit that stereotype, and that's the beauty of it. You know.
Absolutely.
So, Kitika, you want to go?
Yep. So, Claire, as I was speaking to you, we heard about bicycling and diamonds, chocolates, and lots of things. But when I went through your Instagram profile, if I wouldn't have read the description, I would have thought that you were a great photographer. It's like your entire Instagram is filled with beautiful photos, and I know people who just take it as a hobby and do it, but you doing so many things and you know, having your social media platform into complete a new side of photography. That
Right.
was so what do you say? It's a bold move, I would say. Instead of you know, selling diamonds or whatever, you went
Right.
into clear-cut buildings and roads. I think I saw one woman portrait and you with the new dog. Other than that, I think everything was a beautiful building and road-based photographs, Claire. So I would like to know more about it. Do you do photography? And if so, just tell us about it.
Okay, cool. No, I mean, that's a fair question. That's a good question. When I started my Instagram account, I've been a hobbyist photographer for like 15 years. You know, I think 2005, I was in Budapest walking around a conference room in the outside, but 2005, I was also in Hong Kong buying an SLR camera, a DSLR camera. So the Clare Appleyard account has always been my personal photographic account. My Katannuta Diamonds Instagram account is the diamond focused account. So I'm not a full-time photographer. Obviously, I sell diamonds. Would I like to be a full-time photographer? No, because I think it would suck the joy out of it. When you do it as a hobby, when you do it for fun, you don't have to meet any certain criteria. You don't have to be held accountable for anything. So for me, I'm going to say a creative outlet, which is interesting because I've never really thought of myself as a creative person, but I've just always loved a certain type of photography. And I can think back to being a kid, like looking at National Geographic magazines and ski brochures and looking at these photos of these ski villages at night with all these twinkling lights and these beautiful mountains. And I'm like, that's so cool. I want to take those kind of photos. So I've never thought of it as a bold move, but Clare Appleyard is my personal account. And that's my photography. You know, I love street photography. I love Johannesburg. I love landscapes. I'm not a big fan of taking photos of people. Yeah. You know, people are too fickle. Yeah. So, you know, but certain photographers have different styles. So yes, my Katannuta account is the business account with the diamonds, with the jewelry. I'm working on bringing a bit more of my own persona into that. It's, you know, I've been kind of watching some other jewelers and going, they're injecting their personality and they're showing their face more. So part of what I think I'm going to start moving towards is showing myself more in Katannuta rather than keeping myself separate from it. And maybe that's a belief I've had, Madhu, is that, you know, if people saw who I am, maybe they wouldn't be so quick to work, you know what I mean, quick to work with us. But now I'm like, sod it. You know, people want to know that there's a personality behind the brand, you know. Like, and that's the joy of a small brand versus a big brand. A big brand is, you're never going to meet the people behind the brand. You're going to meet the sales assistant or the person who's answering the phone or the gopher. Whereas when you work with small brands like us, you get to meet the owner, you get to meet the person who started the whole thing. And I think people like that authenticity, I think.
Absolutely. Yes. Thanks, Claire. That was my question. It was very interesting. Your photographs are very beautiful, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, anybody else with any questions?
So we have 5 more minutes, and I would like to take about 2 minutes to share about the relationship I have with Claire. And as she just said, that we met on Sherry Blair, where I signed up as a mentor and she had signed up as mentee. And 1 year the relationship went on. We decided to extend the relationship, but my condition was that you mentor me and I mentor you. So it was both ways mentoring. And 1 year later, when I asked Claire, would you like to continue? She says, not the way we are going. Both of us are very complacent. And then we decided we put in some structure in our mentoring program. And 2 of us now, we said, Paul, instead of 1 hour, it's going to be 40 minutes, very crisp, like 10 minutes for this, 15 minutes for this, 15 minutes for this. And we are done with the call. And we found in this past half year, 3 months since we started this, we've achieved much more. My entire social media, I would give the credit to Claire. She's the one who's this thing. This interview itself is credit Claire. Thanks, Claire, for this.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes.
Online is the way to go. I mean, to me, like, if you're not utilizing online for your business, you are leaving millions on the table. Like, literally, you can, I mean, even before COVID, you could reach people around the world that, you would never have come across normally. So I think COVID has been good in that it has maybe forced people like you that were maybe a little reticent and maybe a little hesitant to go online. You've had no choice now. Like, you've had to do this. And that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing.
That's what I was actually wanting to ask, because you were talking about social media and then pre-COVID and currently COVID, or let's say post-COVID. How did it change in terms of your networking or your connections and the entire digital environment? How do you think it has changed? Because anyways, people are not going into the retail stores right now.
Right. Are you asking how it changed for us, what it's affected for us?
For you and for the industry later.
We have been very lucky. So I have always worked from home. Like, if I need to meet a high-end client, or if I've got a client looking at multiple expensive stones, I'll use one of our suppliers' offices. They have, there's a couple of suppliers that have very nice offices. So my brand was built, my brand was built online from the start. So we had a Facebook page from the start. We had a website from the start. We don't have an e-commerce site. So we don't have a shopping cart online where people can buy stuff, because we make to order. So when COVID-19 started, when South Africa went into the lockdown phase, and we went into a 5-week hard lockdown where no businesses were open. It was literally grocery stores and medical. So no business was running at all. And I went, I have to use this 5-week period to my advantage. This is the time to do even more Instagram posting. This is the time to write more blog posts. This is the time to do more SEO on the website, because people are going to be home. People are going to have time on their hands, and people can't go out shopping like they normally can. The retail jewelry stores, I think, were only able to open at the end of May. So we had April and May in full lockdown. We could start operating as a manufacturing jeweler in the beginning of May at 50% capacity with our workshop. So I could take some of those relationships that I'd built during lockdown, where people were sending inquiries, and I was doing quotes. I was sending people quotes. I was sending people, if I had gemstones in my safe at home, I could send them photos of those gemstones. So that by far was a head start over the retail jewelry stores who could do nothing, who could do absolutely nothing. And I think the other thing that helped us was a lot of the jewelers went, we can't do anything, so we're not going to do anything. You know, even independent jewelers like myself, whereas I was like, this is the time to go full force. So I used those 5 weeks to literally build up traction online, build relationships. I was doing Instagram Live, and I think that's helped us. So it didn't change. We had a drop in sales, absolutely, because people weren't doing stuff. But those sales have now started to pick up. So we've been decent, we've been okay, and I'm very grateful for that. And I think it's because I've got such a streamlined business model and such an online business model to start with. That helped tremendously.
Wow.
Hope that, does that answer?
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It does. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
We're at 12:30 now. Time to close. Does Kavita have a question? I see Kavita here.
Yeah, hi everyone. I joined a bit late, so I just wanted to listen to what is going on. So I have a question, Claire.
Yes.
So the question is like, when exactly did you feel that entrepreneurial bug bite you? So was it like when you were working, or like what is that instance, or can you just relate to us, like what made you take this decision?
Sure. And that actually triggers something else that I wanted to mention. So I was always, I'm not doing any exercise now at all, as Madhu and Kevi discovered before the call. I was always a sporty person, and I always said I wanted to own a sports store. That was my thing. I wanted to own a sports store. And my mother's like, you'd be bored. You're too intelligent for that. You need to do something else. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So if I think about it, that was an entrepreneurial thing, is like I wanted to own the sports store. But I went into the corporate world, you know, getting a good education, getting a job, working for De Beers. And the trigger, I think I mentioned this before you came on the call, was meeting my first mentor, a guy called Alan. And Alan had said to me, he's like, you can run a business from an email address and a cell phone, literally. If you have an email address and cell phone, you can run an international business. And I saw the freedom that he had. And I saw the freedom that I didn't have.
Okay.
And I went, I want what he has. I was sitting in a traffic jam in the morning, going to work from one side of Joburg to the other side of Johannesburg. And I was doing the same thing in the evening. And I was like, Alan seems to have much more of a fun life than I have. And that was the thing. It was like, I want that freedom. Like, I want that style of life that he has. And in my mind, he had it because he was running his own business. And that was it for me. I'm like, I want that.
Thank you.
Didn't come easily, but you know, it's a work in progress.
Madhujit, is there time to ask one last question? This is kind of linked to this. Do we have a couple of minutes?
Claire?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, of course.
So,
all right, go ahead.
Thanks for that. So what I have understood listening to you is that you haven't really had some planned thing for your life. Okay, now this age I will do this age I will do this age I will do this. But you have there have been some thoughts in your head, and whenever an opportunity came, you kind of grabbed it very quickly and you just jumped into it. Maybe at times without even knowing too much about it, but you took that leap of faith, as I like to call it. So
yes.
What do you think? Like, I've seen some kind of people who are very sure of their life. At 25, I'm going to do this. At 30, I'm going to do this. At 35, I'm going to do this, and all of that. So how do you bring in that perspective for like why I'm saying this, because I'm this kind of a person. Okay, now this done, tick, 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 tick. Now next, like kind of what? So what?
Right.
How do you stay in a state of fluidity so that things, you just take the opportunity that comes your way without really seeing that whether it is clashing with your plan or not going as per your plan, or how is it? I don't know whether I'm making sense, but
yeah, no, I know exactly what you're saying. And you know, I think society has a lot to answer for as far as those plans go. That people go, well, I should be graduated by 25. I should be in a corporate career by 30. I should be married with 2.5 children and a white picket fence. And then I'll going to move on to vice president of my company, and then ultimate president of my company. And then I'll retire with a golden handshake. That's bullshit. Excuse my French. Like, you know, what society perceives as the supposed plan very rarely works out. And I think if you have a very fixed plan as to this is where I should be at this stage, and this is where I should be at that stage, and this is where I should be at the next stage, you're setting yourself up for disappointment, and you're setting yourself up for dissatisfaction. Because if you don't then have the husband or the wife or the children or the VP position, you're going to be disappointed in yourself and you're going to beat yourself up. Whereas if you have a more fluid approach, I think you're more grateful for where you are. You get to appreciate what you're doing a bit more, but you know that at the same time there is maybe a grand plan unfolding, but you don't necessarily have control over that, you know? So I'm very much, you know, people go, well, what's traditional or what's normal or what's standard? Who cares? That's different for different people, you know? So I don't necessarily have a grand plan in place. I'll be honest. You know, we're going, oh, it'd be nice to retire to Thailand, or we'd love to live in Cape Town. We don't have concrete plans in place for that, which is maybe not a good thing. You know, maybe we need to spend more time doing that. But at the same time, if you have that concrete plan and it doesn't work out, then you end up disappointed and you end up beating yourself up, you know? So put some steps in place, put some goals in place. Absolutely. Goals are huge. Plans are huge, you know. A plan doesn't always pan out, but if you have those goals in place and you put the steps towards walking towards them, you're going to have a better chance of that success and a better chance of result. But at the same time, know that stuff changes on a continual basis. If you take a rocket on its trajectory to the moon, it's not going in a straight line. It's constantly readjusting. There's constant minuscule, tiny adjustments that are taking place to keep on that path. You're going to have to keep making those tiny adjustments. It might not be what you've planned, but it will help you get to that final destination.
Yeah, thanks a lot for making
Pleasure.
sense of my kind of a.
Oh no, I knew exactly where you were going. Did it answer the question? Is my question.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Absolutely. Thanks.
So thank you, everyone. Before we go, can we have a quick picture? Kavita, we would like you to come online as well.
Yeah, sure.
Yep. Thank you. One moment and the picture is done. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining in. Thank you so much, Claire. I mean, it was a wonderful session. Good fun session. I'm sure everybody had lots to learn. Thanks a ton. Yeah.
Thanks,
wonderful session, Claire. Thanks for it.
Yes.
Thanks for it. Thanks,
you're
Madhu,
welcome.
for bringing Claire on board.
Yep.
And yes, thank you, Madhu, for the opportunity. It was great to meet you guys. Hopefully it added some value on a Saturday morning. And it was fun. You know, to me, stuff should be fun. So thank you, Madhu, for making it fun.
Thank you. It's your Saturday morning. It's our Saturday afternoon now.
This is true. I'm going to go and have another cup of tea.
All right. So have a good day.
Bye.
A great weekend.
Bye.
Everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Claire. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot, Suparna.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for the chance.
Thank
Bye.
you.